What is going on, Clutch Crew Sports fans? This is Connor, the co-host with the most, and we are here talking about a sport that we normally don't talk about. This is going to be my official predictions for the NHL playoffs. Normally we are a NFL, NBA, football, basketball sort of podcast, but today we're going to be talking some hockey, and I've got the NHL bracket challenge up here, and I'm going to make my predictions as I go throughout this episode, and hopefully you guys agree with me. Maybe you won't, maybe you do, who knows. But basically, I'm going to be doing this for every single round of the playoffs. This video is going to be basically not only my first round predictions, but my full prediction as well. But as the rounds go on, it's just going to end up being my round by round predictions, and we'll see how my official predictions go. But we got to start somewhere. We got to start with the first round, and to be honest, this is going to be pretty difficult, especially looking at the Eastern Conference teams here. These 8 teams, it's pretty much been these 8 teams the whole season. The West has been a little bit more up in the air as to who was going to get the spots. But we've pretty much known all season that these 8 teams over here in the East were going to be the 8 in the NHL playoffs, and they're all elite teams. There's no easy matchups here. There might be some easier matchups over here in the West, but the East is going to be all tough matchups for every team. But we'll start with the East since it's the conference I'm more familiar with. You know, my favorite team, the Carolina Hurricanes, is also in here. They're the 1 seed over in this part of the bracket on the Eastern Conference side. So they'll have home ice all throughout this bracket. And then hopefully, if they play anyone except for Florida, they'll have home ice in the conference finals too. So but let's start with the East. We'll start up here with the Florida Panthers against the Washington Capitals. Now, the Florida Panthers are the President's Trophy winners. They have probably one of the most ridiculous offenses we've seen in a long time in the NHL. I can pull up some stats here for you guys. Their average goals per game is 4.14. Like, that is insane, averaging 4 goals a game. They by far had the most goals this year. Obviously led by a really good 24.1% on the power play. Penalty kills a little bit on the weaker side, but, they've been a really strong team all throughout. They wouldn't have the President's Trophy if they weren't. The Washington Capitals, obviously, they've been around for a long time. Still all the same faces: Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, all the same guys. This team is still trying to win another Stanley Cup. Definitely went through some struggles throughout the year, and especially here towards the end of the season, they kind of slumped a little bit, and that's why they're sitting here in the final wild card spot. Now, the main key for me here is going to be the health of Alexander Ovechkin. He was injured near the end of the season, and I was going to pick the Florida Panthers anyway, but even more so now, it makes me even more certain that the Panthers are going to win this series. Typically, like I said, there's not going to be any easy matchups here, and I think if the Capitals were fully healthy, it'd be a little bit closer. But I am still going to pick the Florida Panthers to win here. Huberdeau especially, he's their leading scorer. He's been insane, and just, it's hard to compete against a team that can score 4 goals a game. They do have some issues that I'll probably get to later when we get to some of the other matchups, but for right now, I'm going to take the Florida Panthers, and we're going to say that the Florida Panthers are going to take it in 5 games. Can I put that on here? Okay, I don't know if I can put that on here, but we're going to say that the Florida Panthers take it in 5, in my opinion. If Ovechkin was healthy, I'd probably say Florida in 6, possibly Florida in 7, but with the detrimental health of Ovechkin, definitely Florida in 5. A sweep probably isn't out of the question here. Florida's a very strong team, but I'm going to go ahead and say 5 for Florida. Next, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, Tampa Bay, the back-to-back reigning Stanley Cup champions, they've been a little bit, not looking like themselves this year. They've been pretty decent, but not as good as usual. Their power play is still very good, of course, 23.6%. The Maple Leafs, on the other hand, have the best power play in the league at 27.2%. Both teams can definitely still score. Tampa had a little bit of, Nikita Kucherov was hurt for a little bit during the season, but he's going to be fully healthy. Tampa is fully healthy coming into these playoffs, so definitely a very deadly team, and it's, a matchup that I don't think anyone wants in the first round. The Hurricanes were almost going to be in that spot at one point where we might have had to play Tampa in the first round, but thankfully they managed to beat out Boston in the Atlantic, and now we don't have to play them in the first round because I was getting a little bit worried that we were going to have to play them. But that being said, Toronto, they've got Austin Matthews, the NHL's leading goal scorer this year, a candidate for the Hart Trophy. Steven Stamkos has kind of had a resurgent year this year in Tampa. He's been doing really well. And obviously, it's basically still the same Tampa team. Andrei Vasilevsky is still there. It's the same team that won last year. I mean, it's the same team that's won 2 straight Stanley Cups. And they definitely have a good chance to win it again this year. Toronto is a very solid team. And there's a lot of similarities between these two teams in terms of they're very offensive, very offense heavy. Both have great goaltenders. Jack Campbell's is an all-star player for Toronto. Actually, during the all-star game, when they had the goalie competition, like the save streak, it was Vasilevsky and Campbell as a duo that won that for the Atlantic Division during the all-star game. So 2 great goaltenders, 2 great offenses, but I'm going to have to give the edge to the Tampa Bay Lightning here. Toronto seems to always find a way to fail during the playoffs. It's just the way that the Maple Leafs are. There's not much I can say about that. They just seem to manage to fail when it comes playoff time. And especially if I'm going to have to go with 2 teams that are very offensive based, I have to go with the team with the better goaltender, and that's definitely Andrei Vasilevsky. So I'm going to say the Tampa Bay Lightning take this in 6 games. So they're going to have to win 2 games on the road. But, Tampa, they shouldn't have an issue winning 2 games on the road. They did it against the Hurricanes in our series last year. They actually won 3 games on the road against us last year. So definitely shouldn't be any issues there. Moving on to the Metropolitan Division section of the bracket, we have the Hurricanes versus the Boston Bruins. The Carolina Hurricanes, they come in on a 6-game winning streak coming in here. They kind of had a cold stretch going there near the end of the season, but they lost 7-4 to the Avalanche. But after that game, they won 6 in a row. They managed to beat out the Rangers for the Metro Division title. The number 1 penalty kill in the league, the Jennings Trophy winners and Frederik Andersen and Antti Ranta for allowing the least amount of goals. So this is definitely a very defensive-heavy team. Not a lot of goals scored against them. The power play has been a little bit of a concern recently. Not many goals coming out of the Hurricanes' power play. Some struggles happening there, but when you're playing in front of the defense that they have, you don't really necessarily need all those goals to win a game. Like, in my opinion, Florida almost... I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the Tampa versus Florida matchup, but Florida, in my opinion, needs to score 3 or 4 goals every game to win. The Hurricanes could easily only score 2 and still win, in my opinion. They don't need to put up a lot of numbers. The Bruins, they have, they've also had a resurgence here recently. They were kind of looking a bit sloppy early in the year, but they've been one of the hottest teams coming in. Of course, Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, all the regular guys that are still in Boston are putting up points for them. Power play has also been a little bit of a concern for them. Only sitting around 20.9. That's a bit low amongst the teams that are in the playoffs. But Boston also, goaltending concerns in my mind are a bit of an issue for Boston just because, Lucas Allmark and I can't remember the other guy they have aren't exactly the best goaltenders. Carolina, though, on the other hand, does have a major injury issue, probably other than Ovechkin, probably the biggest injury issue going on right now in the playoffs, and that is they are likely for games 1 and 2 to not have starting goaltender Frederik Andersen, the Vezina candidate. So that is going to be a hindrance on them, but Antti Ranta has been good this year, and they had a rookie come in for the last few games of the season, Pyotr Kochetkov, who actually won all 3 games that he started for them. Well, he only started 2. He came in relief in another one, but he has a 3-0 record for them. So the Hurricanes should be set in the net. They're playing in front of one of the best defenses in the league, so, your goalie doesn't need to be outstanding when you have a defense that good. So the other thing for the Carolina Hurricanes that makes me confident that they're going to beat the Bruins here is that although, yes, this is a different Boston team than the Hurricanes had played this season, the Hurricanes outscored the Bruins 16-1 this season in the 3 games that they played. The Hurricanes shut them out twice and only in those 3 games and only gave up 1 goal the entire time while scoring 16 of their own. So the Hurricanes definitely, they have a history with Boston in the playoffs getting knocked out by Boston, but the Hurricanes are ready to get over those demons, and they're going to beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games. Finally, the last Metro Division matchup, the Rangers and the Penguins. The Rangers lost out to the Carolina Hurricanes when it came to the division. They had a chance to maybe scrape up and win the division, but they lost on home ice to the Hurricanes a couple days before the end of the season, and the Hurricanes clinched. The Rangers, they've had a really good year this year. They've got the likely Vezina winner in Igor Shesterkin in the goal. They have a lot of talent up and down this roster. Artemi Panarin's had a great year. Chris Kreider, over 50 goals. They've had a great they have the number 3 power play in the league, especially led by Chris Kreider. He's had a breakout year this year. He's always been a good player, but once you hit that 50 goal plateau, you really establish yourself as one of the great players in the league. So, also a funny story, the Rangers were thinking about cutting Kreider a couple seasons ago. I'm sure they're glad that they didn't. On the other side, you have the Pittsburgh Penguins, one team that's kind of really been stumbling into the playoffs. I'm honestly surprised that they ended up getting this number 3 seed here in the Metro. I thought they were going to fall below Washington, but they managed to keep it together. They've got the same old crew there: Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, Brian Rust, Chris Letang, Brian Dumoulin, all the same guys that have been around for a long time. My problem with the Penguins still is going to be goaltending. I know Tristan Jarry was an all-star this year, but I think that was kind of one of those weird things. I'm not sure how he got the all-star vote, if Igor Shesterkin kind of told the league that he wasn't going to go to the all-star game or something, because honestly, it should have been Igor Shesterkin in his spot in the all-star game along with Frederik Andersen from Carolina on the Metro team. So, and like I said, this team's just kind of been stumbling into the playoffs this year and have not really been looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and take the New York Rangers. Oh, now I can pick how many games. So yeah, Panthers in 5, Lightning in 6, Hurricanes in 6, and I'm going to say the Rangers take it in 5 over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So there we go. I was wondering if I got to pick how many games. Moving over to the West, we have the Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators. These are going to be teams I don't know as much about, so bear with me here as I do this. So the Colorado Avalanche, they had a chance to win the President's Trophy. They kind of stumbled a little bit towards the end of the year, kind of like how the Penguins were doing. They were resting some people, I know, kind of the same with Florida. Florida lost a couple games at the end of the year, but it's because they were resting a bunch of people. Trying not to put too much weight in the fact that they lost 10-2 to Montreal at the end of the season because they were resting everyone. But Colorado, they had a chance to win the President's Trophy and they didn't. Maybe they realized that they don't want the President's Trophy curse, and that's why they started losing, because the President's Trophy has been a curse for a lot of teams for a long time. So I kind of don't blame them for not wanting the President's Trophy, but this should honestly be an easy matchup for them against Nashville. Nashville, they're a good team and all. Roman Yossi's an all-star. Philip Forsberg's playing good. UC Saros has been a great goaltender, but I just don't see them being able to keep it up in the playoffs at all, especially against a team like Colorado, as high-powered as they are. They're probably the best goal-scoring team in this bracket, other than probably either Edmonton or Florida. They're definitely top 5 goal-scoring team. So definitely a great team here, and I'm going to go ahead and say, so I guess I'll just say the games once the thing comes up, because I didn't realize that it was going to come up afterwards. So, excuse me. So, Colorado Avalanche are going to beat the Nashville Predators. Moving on, we have the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues. Definitely one of the closest matchups in terms of how the teams finished with points in the league this year. Minnesota 111, St. Louis 109. Two very well-matched teams. Minnesota, both high goal-scoring teams. St. Louis is the better defensive team. And this is definitely an interesting thing, because if you look at a lot of these stats, you would think that the Blues would be a better team than the Wild. The Wild finished with more points, but the Blues have more goals per game, less goals against, a much higher power play percentage, a much higher penalty kill percentage. But it's just something about the Minnesota Wild. Also, they did recently trade for Marc-Andre Fleury before the deadline, so definitely a sorry, I'm having to clear my throat a lot. Definitely, a team that's resilient, a team that can find ways to win despite not putting up the best stats. The St. Louis Blues, they have a great goaltender in Jordan Binnington. Vladimir Tarasenko is a great player as well. the Wild, it's just that X factor. Kirill Kaprizov, this guy is going to be an all-star for years to come. He's probably going to win a Hart Trophy some point down the line. Probably going to win a few other a few other rewards as well. So the Minnesota Wild versus the St. Louis Blues. I'm going to go ahead and say the St. Louis Blues take this series over the Minnesota Wild. Next, we have the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars, the last wild card, or no, the first wild card in the West. The Calgary Flames, they have a Vezina candidate in goal with Jacob Markstrom. They've been a solid team all year atop the Central Division. Atop the Pacific Division, I mean. They've been a solid team all year, Pacific. Why am I forgetting that? Atop the Pacific Division, they score a lot of goals, 3.58. They have one of the best defenses in the league. Really good penalty kill percentage there at 83%. That's one of the tops in the league. And just Jacob Markstrom's a great player, a great goaltender. The Stars, they've kind of fallen off a little bit since they had their Stanley Cup run, but still a very solid team. They've rebounded from last year. They missed the playoffs last year. But they've been led by Joe Pavelski. He's kind of had a resurgence this year, making the All-Star game and leading them. They've got other solid players there on the team with Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. They've certainly given the Hurricanes some fits in recent years. The only problem for the Dallas Stars really is just going to be their scoring. I mean, you can really just look here at this stat. The biggest difference is in goals per game. The Flames sitting at around 3.6, whereas the Stars only sitting around 2.8. That's a major difference, especially, a team who can't score goals going against a Vezina candidate goalie. That's not a good recipe for success. So the Calgary Flames, in my mind, are going to take this very easily. Finally, the final round of the first matchup, the Edmonton Oilers versus the LA Kings. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, led by their two All-Stars, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Connor McDavid and Draisaitl are both going to be front runners for the Hart Trophy again this year. Probably going to be between McDavid and Austin Matthews, in my guess, for the Hart Trophy. Unless they actually want to give it to a goaltender and give it to Igor Shesterkin. But I'm assuming it's going to be between McDavid and Matthews for the Hart Trophy. There's not really much else to say about the Edmonton Oilers other than those two guys, really. I mean, they're the whole team. The LA Kings, I'm surprised they're here also when you look at some of these stats. I mean, 16% on the power play. That's the worst out of all the teams in the playoffs. A 2.87 goals per game is not great either, but they do have a good defense. The penalty kill is not good, but, giving up 2.83 goals per game is not terrible. So, I don't know. These two teams, they're teams that very different styles. The Kings are more of a defensive team. They're one of those teams that like to play from ahead. Kind of like the New York Islanders. You get that first goal or that first lead, and then you just kind of sit back and relax and just stop the other team from scoring. Like, don't worry about getting goals. Just stop the other team from scoring. The Oilers, of course, on the other hand, are a very fast, very, offensive-minded team, want to get pucks in the net. McDavid and Draisaitl are just a, legendary duo already, despite how young they both are. The other thing for the LA Kings is that they have a little bit of an injury problem with their with one of their defensemen, Drew Doughty. He's going to be missing a lot. He's been missing a lot of time with an injury, but I think he should be back for the playoffs. The other motivation that the LA Kings have is Dustin Brown has said that he's going to retire after this year. So definitely some more motivation for the LA Kings. Unfortunately, the Edmonton Oilers are still going to take this series for them. So now how many games? I say the Avalanche sweep the Predators. The Flames are going to sweep the Stars. This Wild Blue series is going to go 7 games. And then I say the Oilers take it in 5 over the LA Kings. So a couple 6-gamers over here in the East. The only 7-gamer coming in the West. Now, so that's my official first round predictions. We are going to move on to the second round now. Going back to the East with Florida and Tampa Bay. Now, I mentioned the President's Trophy is a curse. Ever since the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup in the 2012-13 season, every President's Trophy winner has either been not... There's only been one since that time that's made it to the conference finals, and that was the Rangers in 2014-15. All the rest of them, including last year with the Colorado Avalanche, have lost in the first or second round. Mostly the second round. The only first-round exit was the Tampa Bay Lightning when they got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets, but it's a curse. It's kind of like the Madden curse in the NFL. I'm not a huge superstitious fan, but I can't deny it's a curse, clearly. And I was kind of glad the Hurricanes didn't get it. But less on that and more on just looking at these two teams. The problem that I have with the Florida Panthers is their defense. Now, I know that 2.86 goals per game is like, it looks good, but I'll tell you right now, it's overinflated because they play a lot of weak teams in the Atlantic. They play like Ottawa, they play Montreal. They're not having to play in the Metropolitan Division like how Carolina and the Rangers are, playing against like Washington and Pittsburgh and the Rangers, and even like the Islanders are a really good team. In the Atlantic, it's pretty much Florida, Tampa, Toronto, and Boston, and then the other four teams are really weak. So a good chunk of your schedule is against really weak teams. I've seen so many games this year where the Florida Panthers were down like 4-1 or 3-0 at one point, and then they had to come back and win at the end, which they are certainly capable of doing that. If there's one team in the playoffs that you should never count out if they're down, it's the Florida Panthers. They have made so many comebacks this year. But the other problem is that those games where they were down 4-1 and down 3-0, they were coming against teams like Montreal and Arizona and Ottawa and all the bad teams in the league. It's like, how are you doing that? And considerably, I can see you being able to make that comeback against those teams because they're not good. But you start playing better teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning and the New York Rangers and teams that can actually defend and also score at the same time, then you start running into trouble. And in my opinion, there's probably a lot of people out there that are picking like a Florida-Colorado final. They want to go chalk. They want to, take the top seeds. But in my opinion, I'm going to say the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to beat the Florida Panthers here, and it's going to go in 7 games. This is a Florida rivalry, two teams that don't like each other very well. But I'm going to say the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to beat the Florida Panthers in 7 games. And the President's Trophy curse will continue. Because ever since the President's Trophy has been released, 50% of the teams that have won the President's Trophy since it was first awarded back in the 1985-86 season, 50% of those teams have lost in the first or second round. So do with that as you will, but Tampa Bay Lightning over the Florida Panthers. Moving down to the Hurricanes versus the Rangers, these two teams are very familiar with each other this year. They played each other 4 times. I mentioned that the Hurricanes got a win up in Madison Square Garden to clinch the division. And the Hurricanes are 3-1 against the Rangers this year. They've given up some goals, but they found ways to beat Igor Shesterkin. They found ways to score goals on this team, and they found ways to slow down their big stars. Chris Kreider's had a few good games against the Hurricanes, but the likes of Adam Fox and Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin really haven't done much against the Hurricanes this year. And also, the other difference is that by this time, Frederik Andersen should be fully healthy and back in the net for the Hurricanes. So I'm going to say the Hurricanes take it over the Rangers in 6 games. Moving on to Colorado and St. Louis, two teams, again, that play each other a lot. They're very familiar with each other. To me, this is a very even matchup. Two teams that are very, again, offensive-minded. Both have great power plays. The Blues have the better defensive team. To me, I just don't know if they're going to be able to hold down the Colorado Avalanche for the whole time. And I'm going to go ahead and take the Colorado Avalanche in 6 games over the St. Louis Blues. Finally, the Calgary Flames versus the Edmonton Oilers. This is going to be where the Edmonton Oilers flame out. No pun intended. This is going to be where they're going to fall against the Calgary Flames. The problem with the Edmonton Oilers is, and always has been, there's not a whole lot of talent behind McDavid and Draisaitl. There is talent. There are some good players, but, the team as a whole is really not Stanley Cup caliber, in my opinion. And then especially going against a Vezina candidate goalie and Jacob Markstrom, I think the Calgary Flames are going to take this, and they're going to take it in 7 games against the Edmonton Oilers. So now we're going to move on to the Stanley Cup Finals, the conference finals here. I know this is looking a bit boring given that I have a lot of higher seeds. Carolina versus Tampa Bay. I figured it was going to come down to this again. These two teams, I said it last year when they played in the second round of the playoffs that whoever won that series was going to go on and win the Stanley Cup. The one thing that the Hurricanes have gained since then is a Vezina candidate goalie, and with Frederik Andersen. And like I said, he should be fully healthy by the time we get here. Andersen versus Vasilevsky, Stamkos versus Aho, Slavin versus Hedman. Just an all-around fantastic matchup here. Rod Brind'Amour versus John Cooper. This time, the Hurricanes are going to do it, and they're going to do it in 7 games. Finally, the Avalanche versus the Flames here. The Colorado Avalanche, They've been on a mission this year. They're going to be the team that beats Jacob Markstrom, and they're going to be the team that can take it to the Calgary Flames and stop them. And the Avalanche are going to win this in 6 games. Finally, the Stanley Cup final. I promised I'm trying to not be biased here, but I just can't help it. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. It's going to be in 7 games. They had a decent performance against the Avalanche the first time when they were at home. They actually managed to shut out the Avalanche. The Hurricanes are still... I can't remember if there was any other team that did it since the Hurricanes, but at the very least, when the Hurricanes played the Avalanche in their first matchup, the Hurricanes were the first team all season to blank the Colorado Avalanche and shut them out. This team, it's just crazy to see how elite they are on defense. It's really hard to compete against them. They have a lot of elite defenders, it'd be one of those things that if the NHL All-Star game wasn't set up the way it is, I think a lot of their defenders would be All-Stars, most notably Jacob Slavin and Brett Pesce and all these other guys, Tony DeAngelo as well. But yeah, the Hurricanes were the only team all year to shut out the Colorado Avalanche, and they did it in pretty good fashion as well. They did lose 7-4 when they played again in Colorado, but the Hurricanes are too good to let that happen again. And I'm going to say the Hurricanes take this in 7 games. Finally, tiebreaker goals scored. That's a tough one. I'm usually not very good at picking how many goals were scored in the finals. Let me see really quick here. How many were scored last year? Last year it was... is it going to tell me how many were scored last year? I guess I'll just have to... I don't know. Okay, let's see. Okay, so 6... 6, 10, 19, 24, 25. Okay, so since I think and that was in 5 games, so since this I am predicting is going to go 7, we're going to say 40 goals as a tiebreaker. So there you have it. That is my official NHL playoffs bracket. I know everyone's going to be like, you're being so biased. It's the Hurricanes. But you know what? The Hurricanes are a good team. So we'll come back after the first round and see how well I did. And then I'll, make my official predictions for the rounds after. But this is my predictions. Take a look at it. Snap a picture. This is the right predictions. I'm going to be winning this whatever NHL bracket challenge this is. I'm going to win it. So let's go, Canes. I'm sorry for any of you, Panthers or Avalanche fan that think this is going to be your year. It's not. It's going to be the Hurricanes' year. No, but definitely it's going to be a tough road. There's a lot of, especially coming out of the East, I think it has to be one of these teams in the East. They're so good. Any of these 4 right here between Florida, Tampa, or Carolina, or the Rangers, I think they're all good enough to beat the top teams in the West. So, if it doesn't end up being the Hurricanes, I think it's going to be Tampa or Florida, honestly. I don't think the West is going to win it this year. Hopefully it's not Tampa for a 3rd straight year. I know Zach would like that, but really hoping that's not the case, Want someone else different to win for a change. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at clutchcrewsport. Comment down below and let me know if you agree or disagree with my predictions. I'm sure you probably disagree with them, but, that's what I'm here for. I'll answer any questions you guys have. I'll be back at the end of the first round. Make sure to like the video and be sure to check out all new episodes of Clutch Crew Sports coming out every Tuesday. Until then, guys, for Zach, be clutch.